I'm convinced that it's not how hard you work. It's that you work on the right things. And oftentimes, the difference between having a lot of success and being very frustrated and burnt out are actually very, very minor. And they come down to focusing your efforts on the right things. It's largely surrounded talking to humans, and we'll talk about that, but also just focusing on marketing the right way. And I want to talk about that a lot today. This came up from a conversation in the online trainer mentorship. I think it was Michael, wasn't it, Amber? Who
but yeah, that sounds right.
He asked me to go into a little bit more detail on an Instagram post that I put up, actually like a while ago. This is like a year-old Instagram post. But what I did is I laid out 5 minor changes that I made. Well, one of them is a major change. But other than that, I laid out 5 changes that I made that took the business from 2021, like basically breaking even, and second guessing what I was doing a lot, thinking about whether I might even change industries at times, to really turning things around very, very quickly. Amber was a part of that process where, God, things turned around fast once we started to shift directions. And a lot of what I did was kind of laid out in that post, but it was very, very quick because it's Instagram, and Instagram is always very superficial. And so he asked me to go into more detail on some of the points. And so what I thought that we'd do, because we had never done it at the time, was have Amber maybe read just like the front slide, but then go into each point and give a little bit more context or detail into what I was thinking and why I decided to do it. And now, of course, that we have even another year, what I've learned as a result of these changes. So I thought it'd be fun to do that. Go for it, Amber. Yeah.
Cool. Number 1, I love this one so much.
Well, read the front slide. Can you read the front slide first, just to give some context?
The first one. Oops.
No, yep. There's like an intro slide, yeah.
Yeah, I see it now. My business almost failed. In 2021, we lost money. In 2022, we did over $5 million in sales with $2.5 million in profit. We're on track this year to do even better. Here are 5 powerful changes I made.
And I'll say that we did do even better. So that was nice. Okay, first one.
First one. Personal brand over company brand. In 2021, we marketed under our company name and would celebrate 5,000 views. In 2022, we marketed under my name and easily reached 1 million plus weekly. Show your face, not your logo.
So basically what happened was that in the years building up the PTDC, it started with, I called it, okay, let's go back a little bit. I called it the Personal Trainer Development Center because it was a dude, me, sitting in my 1-bedroom apartment after a full day of clients writing articles on the internet. And no joke, when I spoke to Pat Benetti, who's the guy who wrote the original, or created the original website and made my business cards, when I spoke to him about the logo, what the original logo for the PTDC basically had a building in it. And what we tried to do with that logo was we wanted to make it seem like it was more important than it actually was. And so we put a building in the logo to make it seem like it was a building and not some dude in his 1-bedroom apartment.
This is awesome.
Personal Trainer Development Center, sounds important. And that was kind of by design. It was meant to sound much more important than it was. And that actually served me because even before the website had any viewers or visitors or anything or any reputation in the industry, it made people feel like they looked good by being a part of it. So somebody could say, hey, I just got published on the Personal Trainer Development Center. I knew somebody else who created a website. I think it was like CanadianNews.com. And it was the same thing. He's just like some Yahoo who just like decided to start a website to make money. But he actually got taken down legally, I think by the Associated Press or something. But he did it because he's just like, everybody wants to say to their friends and family that they got published on the Canadian News. And so what he was doing was people were paying him to write articles about themselves on the Canadian News. Bullshit, right? But like, there's varying levels of bullshit.
But this is the benign bullshit we've talked about in the past.
I love it.
It's benign bullshit. But my point in telling all of this was that the Personal Trainer Development Center grew up as, a dude in his 1-bedroom apartment actively training clients. Like, it was Jonathan Goodman. And I think that's a lot of the reason why people connected to it in the beginning. It certainly was me being forward, me making the connections, me speaking to people on the phone, traveling. I mean, I would travel to 8 to 10 events a year, easy. Just shaking hands, just meeting people in the industry in those early years. And I was very much the face and the embodiment of the thing, even though the thing had a more quote unquote professional name. I was very much the face of it. And what was interesting was that as it became bigger, it grew into something that was new, and I kind of started to play business a little bit more. I started to believe a lot of the hype that I wanted to believe about it, and pretended that it was something that it wasn't, or that I was something that I wasn't. And this was largely, now retroactively, I can look back at it and kind of laugh at myself and kick myself, because it was largely a result of ego that I did all these things. I wanted to brag to my buddies that I was doing all these important things, that there were all these copywriters writing in my name, that I had all these employees and whatever. And so the personal trainer, I started to hide behind the name of the business as an individual. I wasn't really showing myself. And so we would always be writing articles from other people under their names. But it had the same kind of voice. And I myself, Jonathan Goodman, would talk about the articles and about what they mean and promote them and whatever. And then we started bringing on editors and editorial staff. And then we started bringing on copywriters and everything. And I started doing what I thought that I should do when you build a business, which is you don't work for a business, your business works for you. But I didn't really know what that meant. What I now know that means is your business works for you in all of the ways that are outside of your own unique ability, that are outside of that 5% of specialness that you bring into the business. And the goal of the business is actually to optimize. Like, the goal of all of the other people who work in the business is to optimize what makes the business special. It's not to remove the specialness out of the business, even if that specialness is the individual and the individual voice associated with that business. And so what happened was I was hiding behind the logo, and the logo started to be the profile pictures. We were speaking in this professional voice, trying not to offend anybody, with no real opinions on anything, because anytime you give an opinion, you offend people. Whereas now I'm perfectly fine offending the polyamorous vegan jiu-jitsu ice bath association. And that's perfectly fine. The PVIB is just an association that I'm perfectly fine insulting. PVIB of Southern California, of course. If you're a polyamorous vegan who takes ice baths, living in other places, then you're cool by my books. We just like to hug and then challenge ourselves, because our ancestors did it.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway.
I'm going to have Ashley make a logo for that.
The PVIB?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of Southern California.
Of Southern California, yeah. Get Ashley on that. She doesn't have enough to do.
I will. Right?
Man.
And so when shit hit the fan in 2021, it wasn't, you know what it was? It wasn't that anybody disliked us. It was that nobody particularly liked us. It was that we had found ourselves as a business, and I was just irrelevant at that point. We had found ourselves as a business in that very awkward middle ground where the entire community became apathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the dead space. Mm-hmm. That's the dead space. You want people to either love you or not care about you. You don't want people to just kind of like you. Because if people just kind of like you, they're never going to buy from you.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens. There's no movement. And so what happened then in 2022 is I started just putting my face as the person in front of the business again. I started speaking from Jonathan Goodman. And that was both on the blog, but also across social media. And I started writing emails from me again, not from the PTDC team. It was from me, and they were opinionated, and they had personality, and they had admittedly bad dad jokes. And I started talking about, Duck's favorite snacks, which are, of course, cheese and crackers. And what happens when the duck crosses the road, which is he has to make sure he doesn't fall in the quack. And
oh, ouch.
Some people find that funny, by the way, Ren.
Some people whose names rhyme with Hoodman.
No, my family is very, very fed up with those jokes.
Oh, as they should be.
Every time Kelvin asks me to tell him a story now, it's just like, Daddy, can you tell me a story? Not one about a duck.
That's so perfect.
To yourself.
Oh, the kids got promise.
The kids got promise. So anyway, I mean, there's all of this story to tell to say that hiding behind a business almost destroyed the business. I do think increasingly that people want to do business with people, man. People want to do business with humans. If nothing else, there's a trust associated with it. One of the main advantages, I mean, I would never go into any new business now where I didn't think that I had a serious competitive advantage over the existing landscape. And when we developed Quick Coach, I mean, I thought that the entire industry, I mean, it wasn't like there aren't enough softwares for coaches out there. And the total available market is super small. So if you look at that landscape, I mean, I think a lot of these people now that are building like undifferentiated softwares for trainers, I think you're batshit crazy because the market is too small to build software. It's expensive to build software. You're not doing anything different. And there's incumbents who have been around for longer than you and already have network effects. Like, you're going to get your ass kicked. The reason why I did it is, I thought that there was a piece of the market that was actually a significantly large piece that was being completely misserved or underserved, which are basically trainers who never have basically any trainer who doesn't want to be an influencer, call it like the real trainer, which is like 98% of trainers who don't need heavy automation, whatever, who need a simple, slick tool that's low weight, low cost, and easy to use. And that's Quick Coach. So I thought that there was an advantage there that we could build, but that wouldn't actually have been enough. And in fact, there are people who have copied us since then and built tools. I mean, basically just like tried to copy what Quick Coach did, which is just funny because you're always going to be behind if you try to copy somebody else. But what they're missing is the secret sauce. Because what I really did is I looked at the rest of that ecosystem and I said, not a single one of these platforms has a recognizable name or face behind it. Not a single one who's done anything that people recognize outside of building the software. I mean, there are some now where the owners are very, very present for sure, but they're present because they're associated with the software. And so I looked at that and I said, that's a big competitive advantage when you're building a business is to have a face in front of it. Because you can generate community and generate users much cheaper, much easier through personal brand content. Because who wants to look at content put out by like a software company? I mean, some of them make content and it's just like, meh, meh, meh.
Nobody.
Like who cares, right? But if that same thing was put out by an individual who you start to build a relationship with, and that individual happens to own that software, measurably different response. But also, it's a transference of trust. If somebody knows and feels like they have some sort of a connection with the owner of a company, they trust that that person is going to look after them and they trust that that person is going to treat them well. And they'll also give them a little bit more leeway if something doesn't go well. Now, you can't break that trust, but that's a massive competitive advantage we have. So if you're building a business, whatever that business is, I guess what I'm saying is put your face behind it and just let them know that there's a real human, that if they want to go deeper and if they want to get to know on a more personal level, they can. You don't need to necessarily build an audience around that person. But you should have a place where you share more personal things, because there's a big transference of trust there that I think is really measurably valuable.
That's probably one of the top things we tell people when we do like social media audits in the Online Trainer Academy. Like students will send us a link to their Instagram or Facebook, and we, go over some room for improvement. And that's probably in the top 3 things that we address, is because they're using their business logo. And we're like, no, we want to see your wonderful face.
Really cool that you have a tree, and you call yourself
Arboretum.
Arboretum Fitness, or how many anchor fitnesses are there?
Oh man, there's an endless amount of anchor fitnesses.
Why is that?
I don't know. People love the anchor.
It's the meaning behind it. It's kind of like when people get tattoos, there's always going to be like the lion and the clock or the big Black Panther. Like there's just like those like things that everybody.
Or just like I always love the Asian script tattoos where they write across. And you just picture, it's just like, so what do like Chinese people get? Do they get like English writing? It's just like water, just like block letters on her arm. Like, how does that work?
It means hand in Chinese. The praying hands are a big hit amongst the Black people in the South, John. We like to get the praying hands on the side of the arm, and like your grandmother's date of death. That's what and her name. That's what we do in the hood.
Is that?
I see you got Big Mama's date of death on your arm. Yeah, rest in peace, Big Mama.
Lots of rosaries too.
Yeah. That's how we.
And then they put an anchor because of
and then an anchor
fitness. Even though they grew up in the hood in Long Beach, California, or in
an anchor.
In Midwestern United States, it's like, there has never been an anchor in that town.
Anchor Supply Company, Nebraska.
We have a lake.
That's true. There's a
it's
lake
only 4 foot deep, but
Yeah.
These tips so easily apply to the individual business owner, though. That's why I love that you're going through this carousel today.
Sure.
Because pretty much everything that I think you're about to talk about, based on my limited knowledge of what you sent me to research before this,
did you even look at it?
I glanced, I perused, but it's so these are the conversations that I know Amber and I have every single day with students. So I'm eager to hear more.
I'm surprised, Ren, we're going to get into the next slide, I think, Amber, but Ren, I'm surprised that you're able to enunciate so well. I would have thought that gluten-free waffle you had before this would just turn your mouth into cement. Why in all hell did you buy gluten-free waffles? Can we talk about this?
The brand tastes delicious. I don't know what it is about this brand. I don't have celiac disease. I've got no intolerance to gluten. But I bought these by accident once, and I just found them to be quite tasty. And I don't want to be judged for it.
So Allison's mom is gluten-free and is like gluten intolerant. Right? And so we often have gluten-free cake and stuff like that. And Allison always hashtag. Every single time they're like, oh, this is pretty good. And they're like surprised that it's good, number one. And I look at them and say, yeah, it is good. It'd be better if it had gluten in it. But like, it's good, like it's fine. After 3 bites. Yeah, after 3 bites, I can't even talk because my mouth is just cemented together. But like, no, I mean, they did as good of a job as they could with the materials they had on hand. What's the...
Such a good backhanded compliment. Oh, Lord.
Oh, this is good, right. Considering. Yeah. What's the next? What's the next one, Amber?
Talking to customers over "quote unquote" market research. In 2021, we hired overpriced market research firms. In 2022, I appeared on 75 of our customers' podcasts. On each show, I told our story in different ways. Watching the host body language told me everything I needed to know.
So stupid. We hired...
But it felt good at the time.
Oh my God, it was so stupid. We hired so many smart people who knew so little about our industry to go and research and discover things about our industry that we already knew. It was, I mean, I shudder to think how much money we've spent on, call it, brand consultants over the year to do interviews and send us reports and fancy PowerPoints about our consumers, our customers. I mean, easily $500,000, probably more, when all was said and done. And I look back at that, and it was my own idiocy, really. I don't think that we learned a single piece of useful information.
Oh, that's amazing.
I really don't. It was like, I am our audience. Literally. You're a 57-year-old publishing executive who's never been a personal trainer. You're a brand executive person who's never been a personal trainer. You're interviewing personal trainers, trying to pull out information about them. And I think getting an outsider's view could be useful. We just didn't know what to do with the information. They told us all these nice sounding things, and it all coalesced into this just like muddy pile that basically suffocated us because it was just too much information that nobody could make use out of. Meanwhile, I'm like, I know what pisses these people off because it pissed me off.
Right.
And when shit hit the fan, I just slashed all of it. I mean, I asked our bookkeeper, I said, give me our P&L, give me our profit and loss statement. And I just went through every line item, one by one by one. And I'm not super adept with financial statements, but if you run a business, it's your responsibility to understand at least how to read them. Mm-hmm. It's worth taking the time to learn that. It's super easy. I mean, it takes a couple days of study, basically. And so I went through the P&L statement and I just started slashing expenses. And when all was said and done, it wasn't only consultants, but when all was said and done, I slashed over $2 million in yearly expenses. And these were things like the consultants, $6,000 a month here, $8,000 a month there for these consultants. But then it was also software platforms, like data analytics software platforms. $3,000 a month here to plug into a website to give us insights, $360 a month there. And I was like, why don't I just talk to people? I mean,
novel idea.
Why don't I just talk to humans instead of trying to try to analyze all of these click signals that are happening across our sites? Why don't I just talk to the people who are already buying from us and see what I can learn, and at the same time make more connections with them? And so I felt I needed to really reconnect with our community as well. Like, I just needed to kind of get my head back into it. And so I put out a post and I sent out an email and I said, if you have a podcast, I'd love to be on it. I don't care how many episodes you've recorded. I don't care if you create a podcast for me to be on. I'll be your first interview. And some people did. But I'm not doing a fucking Instagram live. I'm not doing a Facebook live. And the reason for that was actually a little bit deeper. The reason that I only did podcasts and that I didn't do Instagram lives or Facebook lives, because a bunch of people asked like, oh, why don't we just go live on Instagram? I'm like, because you got no skin in the game, man.
Right.
I tell the story about going to all these national parks. Many years ago, Allison and I did a 48-day road trip across Canada and the United States, and we hit 16 national parks and monuments, and we hiked in them. Nice. One of the things that I noticed about the national park system, particularly across the United States, is that it's quite busy, particularly in the really famous national parks. It can be very, very busy. But you get to the main parking lot, and you park your car and it's packed. And there's always one path that's marked that's wheelchair accessible to like the main attraction, right? And everybody's there and everybody's taking pictures and they got their selfie sticks and you're like, excuse me, right? And everybody's like angling to take a picture where it looks like there's nobody else there, but meanwhile there's like 1,000 other people there. There's a lot of duck lips happening too. But
Welcome to the US.
But then there's always another dirt path that continues on from there. And the dirt path might go for another 20 minutes to another waterfall or another viewpoint or whatever it is. And there's nobody there. And what I realized from that experience is that business is the same way. All you got to do is go 5 minutes along the dirt path. And all of a sudden, you're in your own league. Mm-hmm. Going live on Instagram is not going on the dirt path. Creating a podcast is really, really easy to do. It's 5 minutes off. You got to maybe buy a mic, even just talking to your computer for the first bit. Who gives a shit? You got to come up with a name. Fine. What do we call this thing? The Goodman Show? Like, this ain't complicated. You can change it. You got to get a little picture that's a square. I don't know. Put a picture of your face on Canva and like put the words there. You're done. You have a podcast. You upload it to what's the thing that we use that we upload? Libsyn. We upload it to Libsyn and then it blasts to all the different podcast things. Like, it can be much more complicated than that, but it doesn't need to be. But what I realized is that the top 1% of our industry and the people who seem to stick around much longer in a very transient field are the people who are willing to go the extra 5 minutes. And so those were the people that I wanted to get to know. So anyway, I did, over 70 podcast appearances in a month and a half.
You were so tired. I remember that time clearly.
It's an introvert's nightmare.
Yeah.
It is.
But I'll tell you, when I look back, Amber, and I look at the single thing that I did that I think the single thing that I've done now 3 times, that I look back and I say, what is the best thing? What's the best action that I've ever taken to grow the company? It was in 2012, doing 137 13-minute phone calls with our audience to learn more about them. It was around 2015, I did another 90 or so, and I did those as 9-minute calls. And then in 2022, when I did the 70 podcasts. Mm-hmm. I think that those 3 bouts, very intense bouts that I did to connect with our audience, to learn more about them, but also give me an opportunity to talk about what we do in so many different ways and learn more about what we do and how it connects to them. I think that's the best thing I've ever done in the business.
100%.
Because what also happened, of course, is these are the people who have become our most engaged folks. And they're also people who odds are going to do great things in the industry. I don't think any of the podcasts that I was on, podcasts are notoriously difficult to grow. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of podcasts have no listenership. And even if they do, it takes years. And it's something like 99.5% of podcasts never make it past 10 episodes. But even if they do, never have more than 10,000 listens. There's just the odds that any of these podcasts that I were on are ever going to turn into a platform where the person hosting the podcast is going to have a really well-known podcast are almost zero. And it's true. Not a single one of the podcasts has become a major podcast. Some of them are still going. But these people, because they're the type of person that's willing to go that extra 5 minutes on that dirt path, by and large are people who are still in the industry and doing great things in the industry. They're great people to get to know. And so from there, I started to figure out how to talk a little bit more. I mean, I started to get my voice back, but I also started to figure out like what people really needed. And it helped me decide what aspects of our business to really focus on for the top people, and what stuff to either stop doing or really put on the back burner. Yeah, man. Talk to people.
I think it's so crazy. Weird that you actually went and talked to the humans that would be patronizing your business on purpose.
Stupid, right?
Dumbest shit ever. That could have been a reel, bro. Like trending audio. You could have smashed it. Instead, you talked to them.
So I mean, we don't have a big real estate portfolio, but Alice and I own I think it's 13 rental units in and around Toronto, and that's her project. And she decided that she wanted to do like long-term, like we don't do Airbnb, it's long-term real estate investing. And then we have a JV partner who manages the whole thing, and they're long-term tenants. Anyway, Allison decided she wanted to do something with real estate and wanted to take it on. She felt this kind of itch to do it. But she didn't know anything about real estate. She never studied it. And so she read a whole bunch of books. She listened to a lot of podcasts, but also at the same time, anybody, anywhere that she had a connection to or that she met that was in any way involved in the real estate industry in any facet, she talked to. Any mortgage advisor, real estate agent, anybody, she would take out for coffee. She would get on the phone with them. And she didn't have any she was just gathering information. She was feeling what kind of resonated. And over time, it took her 7-8 months. It wasn't super quick, but especially with something like real estate, how do you, and I wouldn't even say especially with anything kind of, how do you decide what part of it is right for you? Like in fitness, how do you decide what aspect of this industry is the right part for you to tackle? And so with real estate, what do you do, man? Do you become, do you go into commercial? Do you go into residential? Do you go into long-term? Do you go into Airbnb? Do you go into lending? Do you go into mortgage brokering? Do you go into ownership? Do you do JV? Do you not do JV? How do you decide what to do? There's actually a lot of pieces of it. And so she gathered a lot of information by talking to a lot of people. And she listened to a lot of podcasts, and she kind of just felt what felt right over time, and ended up feeling a connection with one woman. Her name is Mandy, who ended up so she had a podcast, and Allison listened to a bunch of the episodes, got on the phone with her, met with her, and she's been our partner for all of the projects. She's been wonderful. But that's after 7-8 months of talking to people without any real reason other than I'm interested in this thing. And so it's not just, it's not just being on podcasts. It's not just fitness. It could be anything. And it's worked out well for us.
Doing shit and talking to people.
Yeah. What's the radical? What's the next radical? What's the next one? That was stupid. What's the next one, Amber?
I think we could use that quote in almost every episode. That was stupid. Okay, raising prices.
What was this that CJ said? He's like, this podcast is the perfect blend of being slightly unhinged and completely unhinged.
Yeah, exactly. It was the best compliment we've ever gotten. Half compliment.
That's right.
Raising prices over lowering prices. In 2021, we lowered our prices. In 2022, we increased them 50%. It's resulted in better profit, better customers, better product quality, better customer success. Customers don't want the lowest price. They want their problem solved.
Yeah. So do you want a whole bunch of really shitty customers and have trouble serving them and solving their problem, which is going to result in low customer satisfaction, no referrals, no retention, which is going to cause you to discount even farther and get even worse customers until that sinking spiral eventually turns into you going bankrupt? I don't. That sounds horrible. And so here's the context behind that. Online Trainer Academy was our main thing at the time. It cost $1,999. So it was reassuringly expensive. And we offered a phenomenal service. We offered unlimited mentorship. You got lifetime access. And it was the whole shebang. There was one thing to buy, right? There weren't all these different options. It was just like, we know what you need in order for you to achieve what you want to achieve with this, in order for you to have this transformation that you want to have in starting, either as a side gig or a full-time thing in online training business. And so this is everything that you need, right? Take it or leave it. And if you don't take it, there are cheaper options that are going to give you less than what we think that we need, but we still hope that you're successful with them. Totally fine. So COVID-19 hit, and we had about 10,000 customers by that time. By the time COVID hit, it was interesting because the Online Trainer Academy, the course that preceded that was called 1K Extra. So from 2013 to 2020, we had about 10,000 customers, but it was still kind of this underground thing. In large part, the fitness industry was either unaware or uninterested in online coaching. So we were kind of behind the scenes, and that was fine. I kind of liked being Switzerland in retrospect. We're just kind of there doing our thing, and nobody's paying attention to us, and we're making tens of millions of dollars. Like, not bad, right? And the people who are doing business with us, like Len, are just like crushing it.
Loving it. Loving life.
Right. And everybody else is like, I'm so burnt out. And we're like, well, we can help you, but you're not willing to be helped right now. So when you're ready, we're here. But then in 2020, of course, when gyms started shutting down as a result of COVID-19, as a result of the pandemic, all of a sudden the entire industry needed what we, at that point, were basically the only serious player. And that changed very quickly, but we're basically the only serious player that had it. Like, we had the only legitimate curriculum and coaching program that existed in the world at that time. And then, within 6 months, everybody who had 1,000 Instagram followers became a business coach. But that's fine. That's what happens when demand. Yeah, and then they became. No, it was actually Forex first.
Yeah.
It was FX traders, then it was crypto, then it was meme stock traders.
That's right.
NFTs.
And then it was NFTs. And now they've all just lost their money, so they're gone. It's awkward, but
how accurate is that?
And the craziest thing is it's the same person. Like, the Venn diagram is a circle.
It's one dude.
Like, that's my favorite. Like sorry, Steve. Bad luck, I guess. Yeah, but what happened was, people were hurting in our industry. Like, people were really down and out. It was a really bad situation, and so I tried to be a nice guy. I mean, I can't say that it was only because I tried to be a nice guy. We thought it would be good for our business as well to break up the program into two levels. We called it Essentials and Advantage. And Advantage was the previous package, which had all the coaching and everything like that, and some bonus mini courses and whatever. And Essentials was basically like the bare bones do it yourself. And Essentials, I think it was $7.99, right, Amber? And we offered a 12-month, $89 a month payment plan.
Oh, so
of which, and not only that, we offered $0 down. So $0 for the first month, and then $89. So basically what's going to happen there when you offer such an idiotic payment plan like that is 75% of people are going to default. And especially a program where you deliver everything to them at the front. They're like, yeah, no, I finished it this month. Can you cancel my subscription? And we're like, this isn't a subscription. This is a payment plan. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was that I discovered the hard way that it's no easier to find a cheap customer than it is to find a customer who pays you a lot. The only difference between the two is when you have cheap customers, you have fewer resources to actually solve their problem and to do anything outside to generate more customers. You just have less cash. And when somebody hires you, whether they pay a lot of money or whether they pay a little bit of money, they're hiring you to solve their problem. You are ultimately judged based off of whether you solve their problem or not. That's it. Period. There's nothing more to say than that. And we weren't solving their problem because we weren't giving them what they actually needed. What we've discovered is that people need the support. Some people work okay with a do-it-yourself course. Almost everybody needs to be talked off of a ledge multiple times. It's not that coaching is going to give you information you don't otherwise know. It's that a coach has walked that path. And they're able to recognize when you're at different stages of that path and connect with you on it and help you apply what you need to apply and confidently ignore what you can confidently ignore right now to get to the next step, one step at a time. What a coach does, it's like driving at night when it's pitch black and you know you got to go somewhere that's 2 hours away and you know that there's going to be twists and turns. A coach is your brights that you turn on in your car. They're going to illuminate 200 meters in front of you. And they're going to make sure that your car inches up 200 meters. And every time that you inch up that 200 meters, they're going to light up the next 200 meters for you. And everything else is pitch black. You're not even going to see it. That's what a great coach does. Well, when you just do a course by yourself, you got everything. You don't know what to apply. Everything seems big. And so what I did is I increased the price 50%. And then 6 months later, I increased the price 50% again. And we started adding back in the support. We had the money to create the content again. We had the money to restart this podcast, which we had stopped because we couldn't afford to do anything. When you sell a really cheap service with really bad margins, you can't afford to do shit. You can't afford to market. You can't afford to hire anybody to work with you. You can't afford to go out of your way above and beyond for your customers. You can't do any of it. And that's why I call it a sinking spiral. You shift that into what I call the whales and minnows functional flywheel, which is when you charge a lot to fewer customers, you're able to go out of your way to offer them an exceptional service. Mm-hmm. You're able to use those profits to create materials that also help people who can't yet afford your services, like this podcast, like our content. And then you grow some of those people, and your expensive programs then become aspirational to the people who can't yet afford it or aren't yet ready for it. You offer a better service, you offer better customer service. These people ultimately get better results. You deliver on your promise. There's better retention. They stay for longer. There's more referrals. And it's just a flywheel that just starts spinning upwards. And so if you're saying, like, I just want to help people, actually the best way to help people is to work with less and charge more. Mm-hmm. It sounds counterintuitive, but I learned that the hard way. And I'm hoping you don't, which is why low-end membership sites that trainers do, like every single trainer who builds up any kind of a following online all of a sudden decides that they need to scale to help more people by offering some dumb shit app for like $20 a month. And it's like, there's nothing that is you're new to offering a large scale service to a lot of people, assuming that you can even get a lot of people on it, which you probably can't. But even if you do, you're going to get a lot of people on month one because you've worked for years to like build up this reputation, and then you're not going to be able to recreate it because it's like the first book syndrome. It's like an author spends 10 years to write their first book, and then that's success, and then they put out their next in a year and a half. It's just like you haven't had enough time to generate the ideas and whatever. Again, it's the exact same thing. And so what often happens is by month 4 or 5, because users are going to drop. Everybody who joins a membership joins it with the goal of leaving after the first month. And so if you do a really good job, you're going to keep them 3 or 4 months. So by month 5, these apps basically all crash and burn. After month 1, they're like, this is great, I'm going to make millions. And then by month 5, they're just like, nobody's joining and everybody's leaving. And so it's and there's nothing different about it, right? You're offering the same commoditized advice and service. And when you are doing large-scale fitness programming, well, Apple has something like that, don't they? Beachbody, Peloton. You're competing with billion and trillion dollar companies for customers.
And frankly, some of them are struggling too.
And they're all going under.
Right.
Tonal.
Right.
Yep.
They're not trending.
Tonal, Mirror, Peloton. Look at their share price. Or Mirror's, I think, completely gone. I'm not saying don't do it, but just because you've got an influx of followers, you're probably better off not doing it. And it doesn't mean you can't serve more people. So
I'm happy to say don't do it. I'll say it for you. Just don't do it.
I mean, it could work, right? Like an example is Brett Contreras with his what's his thing called? Booty by Brett. But Booty by Brett, is like 8 years old.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I'm sorry for interrupting, but sure, there was a time when there was so much white space, and you innovated something that was truly the first of its kind and captured the more. I get that.
And even then, it went through a few years. So it was called something else. I think it was called the Glute Club or something. He did it with Kelly Hart Davis, who he wrote Strong Curves with. Was it Glute Lab?
I think so.
And we did an interview with Brett. It was very early on. It's like episode 4 or 5 if you go back. But it was a good interview with Brett. We spoke about this a little bit. And the membership actually didn't do that great for a while. And when he changed the name to Booty by Brett, it made a big difference. But also, he was early, and he also owns a body part.
Right. He owns asses.
Like he owns asses.
It's true.
And it's not just a small following. Like, it's a massive following that he has. He also owns and operates 3 gyms. Well, he also owns and operates 3 gyms that, by design, attract like massive fitness influencers who hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers are working out there every day, sharing videos and stuff of the gym and tagging Brett and everything like that. Like dude's not stupid. He's a smart, it's a machine. Andy's put out like the books on the subject. Andy's been doing it for, he was blogging, like deep blogging before I was. So we're talking 15, 20 years. He's been doing it. Another example of somebody. And so anyway, like it can work, but like you kind of be like that.
It's something you earn. It's not something you do at the beginning. That's a space that you have to earn the right to play in.
And then Syed is another example, right? And Syed is another example that's worth mentioning because he has a largely undifferentiated membership. It's literally called like the inner circle, like the Syed inner circle. But again, I've known Jordan for well over a decade in this industry really well. He's been actively creating content, blogging, running the inner circle for over a decade. And it took 4 or 5 years for it to build any kind of momentum. And even now, it's heavily promoted all the time. And this guy is one of the best just raw content creators I've ever seen. He's just good at it. Like he's just the way that he's able to communicate the skill with which he's able to put out messages, the tact, the nuance, the care.
Mhm.
He's just good. And yet, it still took him 4 or 5 years to build up any momentum in a low-end membership. So, okay, I'm with Ren. Just don't do it.
Finally won one.
Yeah, let's cut it there, man. Why don't we recommend the episode with Brett? Do you remember, Amber, how far back it was? You're gonna have to scroll, man. You're gonna have to scroll like when you have to like say your age now and you're like 38 years old like I am. And you go to the thing and it's like, give us your age, and you can't just type it in, and you got to scroll back, and it's just like, oh shit, the scroll's getting longer and longer, man. You're gonna have to scroll back. Yeah, you're gonna have to scroll back in the feed longer. But Brett was very early on when I was kind of testing out interviews, and he's been a friend for so many years. I still remember when I was at his house. I was at his house in Phoenix when he was still living there. And I remember I walked in and he just looks at me. He's just like, John, check this out. I was like, what? He goes, look. And he hands me his profit and loss statement. And he's like, look, I'm keeping track of money now. I'm just like, oh.
Good for you, buddy.
You're making a lot, man. Good job. He's like, yeah, I just bought my parents a house. I was like, it's going to be a bit different profit and loss statement pretty soon, man.
Okay.
House that ass
episode
built.
15. Okay, so
surviving and growing in the fitness industry with Brett Contreras.
Cool. So scroll all the way back, man. Episode 15. Just get that scroll. Just like Wen's 50-year-old school. Scroll all the way back. Episode 15. Check that out. Surviving and growing in the fitness industry with Brett Contreras. He's been through a lot, man. He's good shit. You know, a lot of people have different opinions on him, but you can't not respect what he's built. And we get in deep there and talk about it. So check that out, episode 15. Hope you're good. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.